Welcome back to the Dungeon Master's Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game. With every conversation, we hope to inspire as many as possible to keep on dungeon mastering.
And I'm one of your hosts, DM Derrick, aka How Not to DM.
And I'm your other host, DM Neal, aka Joke Maniac.
And today we're really excited to have Jameson Olsen on, the host of the Becoming the Main Character podcast.
And if you saw in your podcast feed, we entitled this one Main Character Energy. Basically, it's an attempt to pick his brain about all the research he's done. That way we didn't have to do it. And about what he has learned from diving far deeper into stories than I felt compelled to do. Pick out all the bits and pieces about what makes the main character interesting so that we can steal those for PCs, NPCs, and anything in between.
No Jameson from college. We had a ton of fun there together, but we've reconnected since, and because he's had this cool show dissecting all of these classic and modern stories and what makes the main characters interesting, I knew he was the right person to bring on to talk about how to plan your own games to make them interesting and compelling for your main characters, your players.
But before that, we wanted to, first and foremost, shout out everyone that joined us for our first inaugural. That sounds far too formal. But our first office hours in a long, long time. And I know Derek and I had a great time, and hopefully everyone that joined us did as well. And since it went off very well, join us on the Discord at bit.ly/DMBanter. And our next one will be on July 10th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. So like we said, we're going to try and make it a moving target so that we can cover as many people as possible. And of course, if there's a day or time that works good for you, you can always email us, reach out, let us know. That way, maybe we can figure out how to accommodate as many people as possible.
11 a.m. Pacific time calculates to 6 p.m. GMT and 2 p.m. Eastern time. So I know a lot of folks were not able to attend because they lived in time zones much ahead of us, and so it was too late in the evening. So hopefully this is a time that works for you, the rest of you folks, to join in and to chat with us and have a good time. Yeah, we look forward to it, and we're open to chatting about your games, about questions about running the game, questions about other systems, anything and everything you want to talk about related to TTRPGs, or anything else you want to chat with us about that, you know, one of our episodes has made you think about. We're happy to oblige. But yeah, again, that's July 11th, and we're really excited to see you there.
Yeah, last time around, we went from anything from alternative initiative systems to deep philosophical questions. So anything's game.
And you might just find yourself looped into a game if you show up, too.
Hey, there we go. Let's head to the meat.
I'm starving. We ain't had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Why can't we have some meat?
The blatant meat's back on the menu, boys.
And today we're really excited to talk with Jameson. Jameson is the host of Becoming the Main Character. He is a podcaster, lover of story mechanics, and he's recently become obsessed with D&D. Welcome to the show, Jameson.
Thanks, Derek.
So Jameson and I go way back to our days in college. That's how we met, and luckily we moved to kind of a similar place in the state, and we've been kind of keeping in touch since then. So, but tell us a little bit about yourself, about your projects, what you are working on right now.
Honestly, I'm kind of at that point where all I have time for is work, my podcast, and trying to stay healthy. So I'm either working on my show or working out at the gym, hopefully, especially because of all the fires we've been having that have made the air basically toxic outside.
Mm-hmm.
But my show, Becoming the Main Character, I analyze and retell the greatest fiction ever written for a more modern audience in a format that is a little simpler to digest, which is a podcast. On top of just retelling the story, what I get the most out of from doing it is I like to really focus through a lens of paying attention to the character choices and how their choices lead to their success or demise throughout the story, because the simplest way I've come to put it is I believe every story is a simulation of the Matrix. It's a way for us to understand more about how the world functions and how actions have consequences without actually having to live it firsthand. And so if we're paying attention to it, we can actually learn from it. And even though there's some really terrible fiction that does not replicate reality at all, my contention is that's why great literature rises to the top, is because it's the stuff that feels the most authentically true to the human experience. And so we can learn from those stories.
Yeah, and I feel like the episodes you've done really highlight a lot of those really interesting and meaningful human stories. Some of my favorites, in no particular order, because I read a lot of these books in school or whatever. Journey to the Center of the Earth was really cool. Dune. The Time Machine. So you've done a lot of like classical literature, sometimes sci-fi, sometimes not. You've done sci-fi, you've done fantasy, you've done, more modern stories as well. Like more recently, you just wrapped up an episode or two about the Project Hail Mary, which, the book's been out only a few years. So there's a huge spectrum from like ancient stories that are thousands of years old to like even the most modern literature. And I've super enjoyed it because it helps me revisit stories that I've loved as a kid or, newest stuff that I haven't ever read before, but kind of get a little taste of.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I kind of purposefully try to genre jump from one episode to the next. It keeps it interesting for me because, going from, Dostoevsky to a more contemporary sci-fi is kind of a shock, but it makes it interesting. It makes it fun. And I just have a lot of fun exploring all the different nooks and crannies of literature. And so right now I'm just starting scripting for Huck Finn.
Ooh,
which is interesting. It's going to be an interesting episode for a lot of reasons, but it was fun to read. I'm excited to dive into it, and just constantly trying to figure out what is the next story that I'm chasing. That I confess to some people. Well, I'll confess to anybody about the fact that I actually didn't read much fiction before I started this. I've always been obsessed with stories and understanding why do some stories stick with us for a long time and others we forget the plot even as we're walking out of the theater. But for years, that was only expressed through movies. I was just kind of your very average film bro. I'd watch a movie and then I'd go watch YouTube essays that were dissecting it and stuff. So I didn't read a ton of fiction. And so I started this project, and I think part of why I'm able to bring so much enthusiasm to the episodes is because I'm experiencing most of these stories for the first time myself. And so I'm just having a blast.
Well, no, one of the biggest ones is because they're so obvious a pick of The Lord of the Rings, but at the same time, there's something very important about the way that you described the way you're approaching these things, because I feel like now we're so far removed of when it was written. I mean, we're almost on the cusp of 100 years that most people have lost sight of what it is and why it was written. And it was the long and the short of it is just him processing war. And so the way that you talked about it is like looking at these as some of these stories being the most real. And it's like, because he needed to do something to process literal war. And, these books, as in-depth as they are, at their heart is a man's struggle with processing firsthand going through war. And so, that's really interesting. And then, of course, we talked before we started recording, and then just deciding to just have a whole episode about Odin. And so, or just get a wild hair and just talk about something else. I call them mini episodes just because most of my episodes are hours long. And so anything under an hour is a mini episode for me. I like doing mini episodes on either myths or fairy tales, or I've started doing more contemporary short stories as well, just because I've started reading a lot more short stories in the last year. It's partially tactical. Like it's partially because I cannot produce two novel episodes a month. And so in order to publish a little more frequently, I try to do one novel, which I cut into 2 episodes at this point, and then I do one like mini episode. And those are, it's harder to find ones that everyone knows compared to novels, but they're sometimes the most fun. I mean, one of my favorite episodes and one of the ones I get
a lot of great feedback on was when I did Story of Your Life, which is the basis for the movie Arrival. It's just a masterful story, and the takeaways I got from it like blew me out of the water as I was trying to like process what Ted Chiang had created in that story. But yeah, I try to keep people on their toes, and just you never know what's coming next.
So podcast then, if you haven't already heard about it or listened to it, and a place that probably would be great inspiration for these shorter episodes is LeVar Burton Reads.
Oh, if I created a Mount Rushmore of storytellers, LeVar Burton would be on there for me, because reading Rainbow till I die.
Yeah, well, until he does too, because he bought all the rights to it. So
true, very true.
Also, one of my favorite shows for that reason. I just love the stories he picks. Yeah, so good.
Yeah. No, I've only listened to a handful of episodes, just because partially I don't have enough time to listen to nearly as many shows as I'd like to these days. But yeah, he's one of the best in the game for sure.
I feel like we've kind of covered number 2 quite a bit. I'm going to ask it just on the off chance that there's anything we might have skipped over. Is there anything that you're currently working on, and as always, the NDA caveat, that you can tell us about?
I mean, I'm completely independent on this thing right now, so there's no NDAs involved. It's something that I'm trying to find more time to focus on, because to me it is kind of the bigger picture for what I want to achieve. So BTMC is a show, becoming the main character. It's where I've built an audience. It's the like most direct way I have to get my ideas out there. But I really am obsessed with this idea that the exact same rules that novelists and screenwriters use to create compelling characters transfer to real life. Some simple examples are just, the very basic. Like if you want someone to become very accomplished and very powerful, like they have to live a rough life. Like you have to put them through challenges, because they cannot become that without going through those trials. A more niche example of like a literal rule I picked from a book called Character by Robert McKee, who's kind of like this godfather of screenwriting, and he's done all these courses and books. But he talks about events versus storied events. Events are what happen every day. You get up, you have breakfast, you go to work. Like these are all events. They don't have an impact on the trajectory of your life. They just happen. Storied events are things that actually basically flip a switch on or off. They change something about the direction your life goes. And so any book or movie is basically the collection of storied events in that fictional character's life, because we're not seeing everything that happens, because most of it is just bland events. And so I took that and said, okay, so we should be able to create opportunities for storied events in our lives based on the choices we make. And the simple example is I go to the grocery store every week. That's an event. Nothing changes in my life really from it. But if one week I go to the grocery store and I see the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and she doesn't have a ring on her finger, I can create an opportunity for a storied event by approaching her. Or I can not, and my life will never change in that regard. And so thinking through this idea of like the goal is to create more storied events by taking those options. That's an example of a real storytelling rule that actually transfers over to real life. So I have both tongue-in-cheek and dead seriously started my own school of philosophy called Protagonism, where I basically am exploring these ideas and trying to show how the reason these are the rules for creating great characters is because we've learned that that's what we want to model for meaningful lives. So I'm just kind of like reverse engineering that. And so right now, the only way that is like being put out into the world is a Substack called the School of Philosophy. I don't post on it nearly as often as I should. But in my mind, in the bigger picture, BTMC is like one branch of Protagonism. Protagonism is the umbrella idea of like using storytelling rules to live a fulfilling and meaningful life. And BTMC is like one product of like, it's the case studies that show that by analyzing these characters. So that is the other project outside of the podcast.
Side note, but that Instagram account popped up for me as, hey, you might know this person. And I was like, oh, yeah, I do. I thought I followed him.
Yeah, I claimed the account, and now I got to start posting on it.
Yeah, classic. I know
classic.
How it goes. All right. The last thing we have to ask before we dive into the episode proper is a surprise question. Ooh. And my surprise question for all of us, but specifically because you're here, Jameson, is if you were to be ripped out of this reality and isekai'd into a different story as that protagonist, what story would you most like to live through? Or what story do you think you could survive, if you were all of a sudden to have to go live through one of these books or stories or movies or whatever?
Oh, man. Those are two very different questions, because most of the stories I'm coming to mind, I don't know that I'd survive them. but I think I'd be interested in them. Like, my mind's going to books I've covered, even though like movies would be on the table, I'm sure. I'm stuck on an idea that it feels almost counterintuitive to me, but I can't move past it. If we're talking about just the world of the story, not the actual events of the story, because hell no, I wouldn't want to be living the events of this story. But Moby Dick is stuck in my head. The romance of the adventure out at sea and just getting into a completely different environment and being confronted every day with new challenges in that regard. I'm sure if I thought about it long enough, I would definitely come up with a different answer that I like better, but that's the one that I'm stuck on right now.
Hey, no, first idea, best idea. I like it. Neal, you got one?
I agree, though. You did present it in two very intriguing ways. One, like, I'm there and it's like, will I do it? Is me? Or two, like, I get to embody like a protagonist character throughout a story. And then like Lord of the Rings was really on my mind, but then I was like, dude, I don't want to be Frodo. Boo. So I'm down for that world because it's such an intriguing world. And I think it's, going back to it being important to note how much of that world continued to turn as if things weren't wrong. So there's so many spaces and places you could just live out your whole life and have no problems at all. It's not what I would do necessarily, but
you wouldn't leave the Shire, huh?
Oh no, I wouldn't be a halfling. Or sorry, halfling, hobbit. What do we get to call them? Sorry. Yeah. D&D had to deal with that in its early days as well. No, heck no, I'd be a dwarf. It'd be a good time. Playing Gimli through that storyline, I'd do it.
My pick is Star Trek. I'm going to go the newest series that I've enjoyed has been Strange New Worlds, which is written as a precursor to the original series that came out in 1966. But it has updated graphics and updated, storylines and stuff. The sexy, retro future spaceship and outfits and stuff. I feel like I could get beamed onto that ship and they could teach me how to shoot up, I could learn how to be a security officer, and I could probably carve a niche without having to get dropped off at the nearest place. Maybe they'd keep me around and it'd be interesting. I don't know. That really hopeful vision of the future has always struck me. So, but there's a lot of them out there. Like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea would be pretty sweet. Be on a submarine. Although I don't know if I could wrangle Captain Nemo. Anyway.
The other one I came up with, it's funny because in some ways it's just Moby Dick on land, but in terms of the environment, not the plot. But my mind was thinking of Lonesome Dove. It's funny how, as a bachelor, I keep coming up with these stories where like women are not present, apparently. Just a bunch of dudes going out on an adventure together. But there's, something about just being on the road with the boys on your horses. Maybe I have to kill a bear every once in a while, but
all right. So now that we've gotten all that out of the way, I pitched this idea to you a while ago, Jameson, about taking your expertise in what makes a good story and what makes it interesting for a protagonist or for a hero. Like what beats and what things make that heroic journey interesting and meaningful for that person, or, what other aspects could we explore? So that was kind of my pitch, and you've ran with it. So, yeah, tell the people what kind of prep you've got for us, and we'll dive right in. Neal and I haven't seen these lists that he's put together yet, so we're all going to learn together.
So maybe to give the audience just a little bit of an understanding of the mania that I am in these days. To be completely transparent, I have never done a D&D campaign yet. I have done several one-shots. I have played multiple campaigns of BG3, but I just have not been able to be in a position to join a group for an actual full-length campaign yet. And yet I am obsessed with the world, not just like the actual world of, like, I can't even Eberron. I can't remember the other the other actual worlds, but I just mean like the world of D&D as a community. And like I keep buying stuff. Even like I had to buy Ravenloft as soon as it came out because I've been obsessed with horror the last year, and so I was like D&D and horror, like I have to. And so I just keep diving more and more into it. And I think part of the reason I love getting more into D&D is because it is one of the only places where there are such clear instructions about every element of world building. Like it's not just that you have like different classes, but the monsters have essentially backstories, and like you have all these rules of engagement that guide, how it is. And every map has dozens of points. It's just like the most completely contained, generated world where you still get to come in and create your own adventure, but you are handed everything you could possibly need to create that adventure. And so I just keep diving more and more into it, and I am falling in love with it. And so even though I haven't ever been in a campaign yet, let alone I've never DM'd, my mind is drawn to how I can apply what I understand from great storytelling into the world, whether it's me as a PC or one day as a DM. And so as I was just trying to, I didn't set out with a specific goal, but I just sat down and I was like, I want to make sure I have like possible value to offer in this conversation instead of just rambling about random stuff. But it kind of led to me making a few different lists of different things that hopefully can provide some value and help shape. Most of it, I think, is geared towards DMs, but some of it is more PC related, possibly. But they're just things that I'm trying to think of how you can enrich. Like in my head, if you're a DM, the goal is to create an experience for the players that when they walk away from the table, like they're going to think about it for a while.
100%.
Like the story is impactful enough that it actually like connects with them to an extent where they are revisiting some of the memories of what they did. And so I'd say most of the stuff here is stuff in my head that can be used to try to create those types of moments for players like through it. So the first list is the shortest one, and it's kind of the most foundational one, but I call it my rules for cathartic character-driven stories. And so based on my analysis, like me paying attention to the heroes or at least the protagonist type characters in stories, there's some rules that I found that really kind of pop up over and over again with the really powerful stories. So the first one is kind of one coin with two sides. But one of the things that's been foundational to my approach with BTMC and even protagonism is a quote from Carl Jung that says, all it takes to be happy is to know what your values are and live in accordance to them. Most of us are doing one or both of those wrong. And so as a player, I think that, you have your characters who don't have values in the beginning. You've got your Han Solos, your Mad Mardigans, but by the end of the story, they've found values. Like they've changed in a way that now they have more meaning than just looking out for their own hide. Or on the flip side, if they start with values, they're kind of two prongs of how that could go. Either they have to grow into realizing those values weren't actually accurate. The first example that comes to my mind is Pride and Prejudice. Like Elizabeth Bennet prided herself on her wit and cleverness in a way that made her think she was a perfect judge of character. Turned out she was stupid wrong about Mr. Darcy. And so she grew into realizing like, oh, I was wrong about this, but she still had value. She just realized they weren't quite right. Or one of the most like deeply resonated types of stories is when they hold to their values at great cost, when they refuse to give in and it does not come cheaply. And so, yeah, the rule one is just in terms of values. Like the character needs to either develop values they didn't have, realize their values were wrong and make changes, or they have to pay a heavy price in order to hold true to their values. I think those all can play out differently with different types of characters, but that's the type of story that lived through by the time you end it, you just feel that like that resonance in your chest of like, whew, that was impactful.
Yeah.
So there's a real interesting thing that we might get to do through this. First and foremost, it's going to be hilarious if we think we're going to get through all 3 of these lists. But we'll just start there.
Wait, this isn't a 3-hour episode?
Not necessarily.
I know that's what you do.
Yeah. So there's that. But there's a very interesting thing that I think format wise, because as much D&D as I've played, as many people as I've interacted with, and like the people that got me into it were doing this whole thing, decades before I approached it. It's so interesting to hear some of these things and then me get to plug those backwards. Whereas you're trying, you're coming to it so fresh. This is interesting because like, it's such a good way to look at and immediately me go, oh, so when everyone says lawful stupid about every paladin that was ever played, this is why. This is the exact iteration and like description of why they are that way. It's because someone held to values too tightly and didn't budge from them in a way that everyone realized isn't, 1, realistic in any meaningful way, and 2, doesn't create a good story because you're just doing the thing. You're just saying the thing again. And then you're not growing. You're not doing anything different than constantly being like, well, it says on my sheet that I do the thing. And you're like, oh, cool. You said it said on your sheet. Wow. How robust of a character you seem to be at this time.
I agree, though. It's an incredible lens to look through, and it's totally true when you've got characters who have specific values, whether it be from a deity or from a religion or from a faction they're a part of, or from, the race of people they're from, or from the town they're from, whatever it be. A lot of people will use this as like a bedrock to build their character on, right? My character believes X is true or Y, Y, and this is kind of like their worldview. But the really fun and interesting moments of role playing and storytelling come from when you challenge their values. Like you were saying, like that is textbook, an incredible way to give them like a tough decision to make, or, like you said, if you make them stick to their guns at great cost, that is an incredible way to help cement, like, yes, I do believe in these things enough to sacrifice someone I love or something I love, or, whatever it's going to be. That is a really great way to make them have to address that head on and make a strong character choice about what they believe in and what they're willing to do to back that up. Yeah, I love that, though. This is a really, really, really good place to start when you are prepping for games and you are asking your players, like, what kind of stuff are you interested in doing, or what kind of stuff does your character believe, giving you a framework to like address that and either challenge or like help them reaffirm those beliefs or whatever it might be.
I got to share the last one shot I did. I went way too hard on character creation considering it was a one shot, but this is the obsession setting in. Like for the first time, I was like, I want to create a robust backstory. And I spent a lot of time on it. So the basic premise, me and the party, we are the only survivors of some regiment or whatever denomination of military power of the Flaming Fist fighting off these hordes of Avernus. And each of us was given, unbeknownst, like no one knew who else everyone else got, but we each got a slip of paper with a comrade of ours who had meaning to us that had died in the battle. And so I took that and built it into my character even. And so I won't take the time to get into all the details, but I'm really proud of this character. But basically, it was a half-orc cleric who used to be like a berserker, basically. And he was valued for the violence he was capable of. And one day he just kind of realized that didn't sit well with him. And so he chose to go the path of a cleric. And there was only one person who didn't think he was crazy for kind of giving up his gift for violence. And it was the quartermaster, this old man who just like supported him, believing that he was worth more than his blade, essentially. But the story I built was that when all the violence happened, of course, the quartermaster was killed, trying to take rations up to the front line, just died this like meaningless death. And that something like snapped in me when that happened. And so I like uncovered my axe that I hadn't touched in years. And because I have clerical abilities, I worked with the DM to get approval. That I then imbued it with like radiant power. So it was just like even that more hardcore. And then what I didn't expect, because I'm tying this into like the values and trying to create these moments that sit with the character. Towards the end of the one shot, the DM, we like had an encounter, and then we each step on, there were like a series of steps we could choose, and whichever one you stepped on, there was some reaction. And the one I stepped on just said, like, it said one word, it said sacrifice, didn't say anything else. And like it was insane how like in that moment it felt I could tell the quartermaster who had been so proud of me for giving up violence was saying, you don't need to return to this. Like you made the right choice. You should stick with it. And so I knew it instantly. I'm like, I have to sacrifice my axe. Like that is what I'm being asked to do right now, because that's what the story demands. Like that is the most important choice I could make. And I started getting emotional at the table. And everyone else is just like, why is he giving up his main weapon? Like, this is kind of silly. But yeah, it was because like I had my values that I'd shared with this character that no longer was there. And that led me to make a choice that, again, in terms of the gameplay, doesn't really make sense. But in terms of the character,
it's not the optimal choice.
But in terms of the character, it was the most powerful thing I could have done. So anyway. That's just an example that I've had in my very limited experience. Because I know there are plenty of people in the world of D&D who are more in it for the tabletop RPG. Like, they just want encounters, they just want to get cool loot, blah, blah, blah. But for people who actually want to kind of experience a different world at a personal level, there's some really cool stuff you can do. So moving on, the next one is really brief. We don't have to spend much time on it. But just, we connect through flaws, not perfection. Like, a perfect character does nothing for us. Whether that's us as the PC, that's an NPC we're dealing with, even, you know, ironically, making villains have flaws. I don't know if it's a soft spot or like whatever, but give them some dimensionality by just making them not be this perfect chain with zero broken links in it, essentially. That creates for some really interesting story opportunities. The next two rules are also kind of connected. So the first one, basic framework I talk about on my show all the time. There are heroes, there are villains, there are victims. They all share one thing in common, which is they all experience pain. How they differ is how they respond to that pain. The victim freezes up, they feel powerless, they blame the universe, they are looking for someone to come and fix it for them. The villain is intent on inflicting that pain on other people. They want people to feel what they feel, whether that's the person who inflicted it on them in the first place, or it's completely innocent people, whatever it is. The hero undergoes a transformation, and that is very key. The hero is the only one of these that really changes as a character. So they undergo a transformation in order to prevent pain, whether that's future pain for themselves or it's to prevent others from experiencing the same pain they have gone through. It's a very basic framework. I picked it up from a book called Hero on a Mission by Donald Miller, and I use it all the time as a lens. And so that transformation for a hero comes through sacrifice. And so try to give the characters the opportunity to sacrifice things of their own volition. Like, they see the stakes, they understand what has to be done, and it's gonna hurt. Whether that's giving up their most prized legendary item, whether that's putting their character at risk of death in order to save their comrades. But they will wrestle and feel something more deeply if they are being forced to make a tough choice, but they know it's the choice they have to make. That is the only way that the transformation can come. And so the flip side of that, I think, as the DM, alternatively, in order to really replicate real life, you're not only asking them to make choices of sacrifice, you're also basically forcing them to sacrifice through situations that you create in what I would call burning the boats for them. Like, it's not asking them to burn the boats. It's like, I'm going to burn the boats. So like, you have no choice in the matter. Like, you just are being propelled forward, even if you're not ready for it. You know, and there's some really beautiful, I recently did an episode about the 4-act story, which is fairly similar to the 3-act storyline that Western storytellers use, except that Act 3, which is 10, means like twist. And it's not just a plot twist like a Western story would have. It basically is like oh, you have these characters living normal lives, and then a meteor comes down and strikes the Earth. Like, they are completely game-changing things. So Parasite is like the most popular example of a 4-act story in Western society. You know, like, you've got these, you think you know the story is, and then around Act 3, something happens. You're just like, wait, what? Like, that is not what I was anticipating. And what's interesting to me about the 4-act story structure compared to the 3-act is the 3-act story basically says you're going to be confronted by challenges. Are you able to overcome them? And the 4-act story says you may encounter things that make it impossible for you to achieve what you initially thought you were going to do. What are you going to do now? It basically challenges you to get back on your feet and like grab the pen and make sure you keep the authorship of your story, even if you have been robbed of the opportunity to do what you set out to do in the first place. So that's a lot of different kind of takes on the same idea of like, I think a beautiful story would balance letting the characters make choices of sacrifice so they can transform. And it's also forcing them into situations that they would never choose, whether that's, you know, Frodo being forced to take the ring. Inside of a campaign, it may look like you were anticipating reinforcements to help you, but you learned something new. We got to go now without the reinforcements. This is terrifying. We're probably going to die, but like, we have no other choice. So again, it's almost like a different coin with two sides. Like, sacrifice and risk is essential. Can you create a world where they both have to volunteer at times, and in other times they have no choice in the matter and they just have to do it?
Yeah, I remember that 4-act story episode, and that was really interesting to me because I started to think about like other stories that I've encountered that I feel like kind of follow that versus what would be more typical to Western storytelling, and it was very interesting. But yeah, I like the burning the boats. I will do that, not frequently, but you know, a few times a campaign. You know, you paint them into a corner and say, all right, you know, like, your back's against the wall, now what?
Yeah.
And it's always really interesting. I was playing a modified version of the Dungeon Dudes Dungeons of Drakkenheim before that book was even out. This is like a third-party publishing group, but I had a giant meteor fall in a town, and they had to like figure out how to get rid of this meteor because there was this weird corrupting energy that was coming off of it, destroying everything around it. Eventually, it was like, we have to deal with this thing, or else everything we know is going to disappear. And so they had to make a tough choice. But that led to the most interesting and fun and meaningful outcome of them, you know, taking a huge flyer, taking a huge risk and it paying off, and being the heroes, being the people that bring back all of their loved ones and you know, society as they knew it. So yes, a really, really useful tool for sure.
Yeah, because one of the things is that, you know, it's been, I mean, I've definitely said it a bunch of times, but it's important to say again here, is like, the players at your table always need to feel safe. The player characters don't. Like, that's important. Like, it's an important distinction, because I feel like that line blurs a little bit at times, where it's like, "Whoa, no, my character, no, it's okay. Your character can be in the worst spot. Like, as long as you, the player, still feel comfortable with everything that's going on." And it goes almost back to something else that I was thinking, is like, I almost have never thought to ask, like, okay, so what are your lines and veils and things like that you don't want to see? But what an interesting question to ask. What are those for your character? And the same, because it also is making me think of like, because like you said, all these things have numerical values. When you talk about D&D and you're building these worlds, and you're like, you can roll on tables to just sit there. In the 2014 DMG, you could literally just go through rolling on tables and have a world at the end of it. And so something is very interesting conceptually about like the safe version of D&D plays between, let's say, 5 and 15. But is that as fun as 1 to 20? No, it's not, because if I never see a 1 or a 2 and I never see a 19 or a 20, I don't think it'd be as interesting of a game. And so like, if I'm not burning these boats and I'm not creating these scenarios where they're having these harrowing experiences, they are also not in turn afforded the opportunity to do something over the top, to have those storied events. There it is. Oh, look at these callbacks. I'll even cut it out and make it sound better. No, I obviously will not. After editing for as long as I have, 100% will not.
No.
But the idea of like, I guess that's almost like codifying it with, using some of your terms is if I'm only playing from 5 to 15, I'm getting close to events. But if I'm really playing from 1 to 20, that's where I can have those storied events because everything's on the edge of a knife. If straight out a little, but if they roll that 20 at that exact perfect moment, those are the things that someone goes and tells someone else about. And they weren't even there.
The thing that you remember, that you keep coming back to.
But that 20 doesn't matter if the stakes weren't high enough.
Right.
If they didn't feel the tension, if they didn't feel like these things mattered for the story, or even individually, just for their character in that moment.
Well, and that's a great point. And I think based on the way you phrased it of like the living between 5 and 15, going back to what I said near the beginning of like, to me, every story is a simulation of the Matrix. It's a way to experience things without having to live them in real life. And so if you're playing a version of D&D that really kind of lives in that safe zone, in that way, it's very similar to just playing a video game where like you could die and you're just going to load it up again and you'll be fine. And eventually you're going to win for sure. But like that isn't pushing the boundaries of experiencing what you could experience as much as a story where like you could fail. Like you could just straight up lose the mission if things don't all work out. And that is pushing a boundary that like, unless you're playing every video game has their like real life mode where if you get hit with one bullet, you actually die. But
survival mode or whatever. Yeah.
And so to me, like what's exciting about D&D is that you are a more active participant in a higher stakes story than what a video game or, more traditional experiences would give you.
I mean, before we move to the next point, that reminded me, there is a horror game where the fastest way to beat it is to so basically you're on a very small boat, you dock, it's dark, it's stormy, it's terrifying, and the fastest way to beat the game is to turn the boat back on and drive away. You're just like, you full nope, you just nope right out, and then it rolls credits. It's like, great job, you done did it, you survived because you drove away.
Far Cry 5 did that exact same thing. Like your first choice as the character is, do you arrest the cult leader or do you walk away? And if you hesitate long enough, you walk away and the game just ends.
Nice.
Should we talk about trope flippers next? They're more fun and silly.
Let's do it.
So I thought something like D&D, there's so many tropes that are useful. Like I'm not saying they're bad, but it's just like, how can you shake it up a little bit? Like how can you do something that's, bordering on silly, but just it makes it so people will be like, oh yeah, I've never experienced that before. And since I'm new enough to D&D, for all I know, all of these have been done many times before, but they're just things that I thought of. So we won't go through all of these, but I'll just like throw them out there and you guys can react to them. So the first one I had is like a chosen one that you spend a lot of time trying to get to. And then when you get there, you realize they're a complete idiot. Like they are not going to be helpful to you really. Like they're very powerful, but they're not useful. Like you basically have to hold their hand the whole way.
Have you ever watched Preacher?
No, I haven't.
Okay. We'll just leave it there. You should watch Preacher.
Okay. Another one is the mentor who quits. Can you imagine? Like having a mentor character that like after a really hard encounter, there's like, I'm out. Like I'm not doing this. And they literally just leave you. And you're like even though it's a tabletop RPG, like how unsettling would that be to be like, we were depending on you to guide us and now you're just quitting? Like that'd be kind of terrifying.
That's really funny, actually.
This one's not really funny, but it does subvert the expectations, in my opinion. Because like the idea of the villain's always like in a dark tower or a castle or whatever. But like, what if they lived in the middle of town and they had a beautiful public garden that they let people come and visit, and they actually seem like quite the charming person, but like they just secretly are this monster inside, even though they're like an active member of their community.
I love that one because I feel like people don't do it enough because I think it's difficult. I do genuinely think that's a difficult one to pull off, but at the same time, it starts to create a much more interesting narrative because it's not something you can just beat with a stick. It's not just a bag of hit points. You have to change, the players have to change the narrative. I've created a narrative for you that is, this is a very bad person. Society doesn't know that.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And like, if you do kill him, is the whole town going to turn on you? And all of a sudden you're fighting a
Absolutely.
mob. Like,
Yeah, if you didn't have enough evidence, or hadn't changed their perspective on how things were,
yeah.
they don't like it.
This next one, I think, may be the funniest, in my opinion. If on your first encounter with the big baddie, he tries to hire you, like he sees the value in you as like a fighting force, and he tries to hire you. He's not trying to convince you to turn to the dark side like Darth Vader. He just literally is like, "Oh, can I pay you guys to like help me out?" And when you deny him because he's the bad guy, he just doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't understand why you're refusing his employment, and like just this idea of the bad guy just wanting to have you work for him, but you're just like, no, like, I want to kill you. And he just doesn't understand why.
That is funny.
Especially out of like just sheer, well, no, but I'll pay you twice. I'll pay you double.
Yeah, like he keeps raising what he'll pay you to join him. But yeah, for me, I love it because there is no malice. Like, there is no, the idea of trying to convert the hero is super old. But the idea of the villain not getting why the hero like refuses his money is very different. You could make legendary items that have a curse, but it's like a petty curse instead of like a really dark one. Like, maybe you have this legendary armor that's incredible, but it has a couple jagged corners, so randomly the DM just tells you that you've taken 1 damage. Or like, you could have a legendary weapon that it onomatopoeias itself very loudly, and so like as you're swishing it, it's like yelling swish, which would make it hard to use when you need stealth. But like, you just come up with like some silly ways to make an item not be squeaky clean, but it's not turning you into an evil monster the more you use it, like a lot of cursed items do. The job board with no actual quests to start, it's all just literally manual labor, and you actually have to go do chores for a few people before one of them actually gives you a quest to start. I was trying to think of a way to flip the starting, since it's always either a job board or a tavern or whatever, like just something that kind of like shakes that up. The merchant who sues you. So you're on the road, you see a merchant be attacked by wolves, you kill the wolves, but in the process, the merchant broke his arm and he's suing you for damages. And you could just have that play out throughout. Like, every time you show up to a different city, there's like a message waiting for you from his lawyer that's like, you are due in court this day to like...
This is the plot of The Incredibles.
Yeah.
When he saves the guy who's jumping off the building, and then he sues him, and that's what makes like all of them have to go undercover.
So it could just be a funny callback throughout the whole campaign of just like the merchant has sent another message, like that you owe him money or whatever. You could create a fork in the road or a crossroads that, like, as soon as you start down one path, like ominous music starts playing. Or like it's almost like the path is trying to tell you which way to go, but in a very cheeky way that like you're like, do I trust this? Like, I don't know if this is real or not. Oh, this one could be really funny. Like, a lot of these come down to how much you as the DM are willing to commit to like introducing the bit and maintaining it. But if you had like a wizard who gathered you as a group, but he's like pretty blunt about the fact that you're his C team, like, and he keeps mentioning how like, yeah, like he's dropping names of other ones, like, I wish he'd been available, but I'm, gotta make do. And he just keeps like letting you know that you were not his first or even second choice.
I think that's a general concept that is wildly underused, is the idea that you alone are the only adventuring party that's doing adventuring.
Oh yeah. You are the A team.
No,
always.
like, I do it. Like, I mean, and I'll cop to it just as much as anybody out there would. Like, I'm a huge proponent of it, but that concept is wild to me, that I feel like for the most part it is that like this adventuring party is it. There are there are few tales of anyone else doing anything right now, but I love the idea of just any version of you're not the best.
Yeah.
Hands down. Like, yeah, I mean, you're doing good, but
Every once in a while you got to run into Gary Oak, and he's got a humble.
Yeah. He's got the perfect counter. How could he?
And he drives away in his convertible with cheerleaders in it or whatever.
Oh yeah.
I've been watching the original with my kids, and it's been super fun to go back and there's some stuff that I'm like, oh wow, that hasn't aged well.
No.
And then other stuff that's pretty funny.
I got one more trope I want to share, and then we move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, I think one of the most common tropes. Actually, no, that's not the one. I'm going to share this one. Give more depth to NPCs. Like, I think people very much undervalue how much fun you could have with NPCs. Again, these are all kind of silly. So if you're more of a like, I want realism, I want grittiness, maybe it's not your thing. But like, what if the warlock tries to summon his summons and learns that it's on strike? Like it's filed like a violation with
His
your patron and said like he's not treating me well. Or like druids talk to animals, but what if this druid actually dresses pretty tackily and so all the animals judge him and don't want to talk to him? Or maybe the bard like charms someone with his song, but it has an adverse effect that makes a woman actually become obsessed with him and she just follows him around everywhere. Like, yeah, I think you give a little more flavor to NPCs in a way that makes people like kind of do a head shake at like, oh wait, that was expecting to happen with this non-player character. But yeah, so the third list is what I picked the term campaign makers just because it rhymes with trope breakers, but these are so random. It's hard to like even say they have a theme, but I was just trying to come up with random things that I think add depth to a story in one way or another. So I've got more than we have time for, I'm sure. So I'll just try to highlight the biggest ones. The first one, which, this is a very discussed topic. So this is by no means like a hot take. But the idea of creating a villain whose backstory makes the players go, I get it. Like I see what they're doing there. And kind of tied to that is a different one I'll just lump in here, of the idea that power is the most boring motivation for a villain. Like there's so much more interesting motivations. And so one I'll share from, so I did an episode on the Labors of Hercules, which is an incredible story. And interestingly enough, the philosopher Seneca wrote a play about this called The Madness of Hercules. And in that story, Hera, his stepmom, essentially, because unlike Disney's portrayal, Hera is not his biological mother. She was a mortal woman. And so Hera hates Hercules.
That's why he's a demigod.
Yeah. And so in the very first act, it's Hera basically expressing her pain. And I don't think I've ever heard a more beautiful declaration of pain from a villain than this. So, because the whole idea, the basic premise is, Zeus or Jupiter, because this is the Roman pantheon, Jupiter's like always cheating on her with other people, and Hercules is like the biggest reminder of that. And that's why she turns on him to set up this story. But so here she is. She's walking around on Earth. She's not in Olympus. So, quote, "Once I was wife and queen to Jupiter, but now, abandoned by his love and shamed by his perpetual adultery, I leave my palace to his mistresses. Why not choose Earth when heaven is a whorehouse?" Ooh, I loved that. And you just get this image of like, she is hurting so badly. She is in so much pain about the embarrassment and the shame that she has been put to because of Zeus's philandering. And then she has to look at Hercules, who is getting all the attention from all the mortals, and even the gods are just like, this guy's awesome. And he even bears her name. Heracles means the pride of Hera, because it was Zeus's boneheaded attempt to try to win her over to the fact that he was not her son. And so she decides she's going to do something about it. And that's what sets up this story of the labors of Hercules. Another example that I came across that just shows how you can create really deep and meaningful villain motivations that don't have to do with just being evil and power hungry. So what if the idea is the villain is actually a necromancer who casts a spell every night to bring his dead wife back the next day. And he has to cast it every single night. But every single night he casts it, another random villager dies. But he will not give up his wife at any cost.
It's kind of giving me Prestige vibes, or like, I guess Warhammer 40K too. Like 10,000 people have to be sacrificed for the emperor to survive or whatever. But yeah, I like it a lot. It's also kind of like Inception, right? Where he keeps his wife. Yeah,
he selfishly keeps his wife. Yeah.
Even though he says you shouldn't do that. Yeah.
A fun layer to that would also just be like, as part of the story you're telling, like they don't know until like the players confront them. Like he doesn't, like this necromancer doesn't realize.
Oh, he doesn't know that people die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like he's just casting the spell, but not fully understanding at what cost. But again, circling all the way back, but it doesn't change. The knowledge doesn't change the operation. Like, okay, well, I'm still going to do it tonight.
Yeah. You could have so much fun with it. Like it could be so much more interesting than just like, I'm a big bad guy and I want to kill everyone, or I want to like take all of the resources from everybody or whatever. Let's see. Okay, here's one that I've instinctually done it for my characters, and I think it would be fun for a DM to basically make it a rule for everybody. So there's a Greek term hamartia, or I don't know if it's hamartia. I'm guessing it's hamartia though. But it basically is the fatal flaw, right? It's the one characteristic of a character that is their undoing. And so like for Hamlet, it was his indecisiveness. Every character has one. So I've instinctually in my character notes always kind of made a rule for myself that I have to abide by, not because I want to, but because my character is so deeply ingrained into being that person that no matter the cost, like I will follow this rule. So the first ever one shot I did was actually at Derrick's house. And he suggested very wisely, like for the first campaign, pick a character in fantasy that you like and just kind of model them. It makes it a little easier to kind of understand things. So
That's a Neal.
Oh, is that you learned that from Neal?
Nice. Shout out, Neal.
Amazing.
Yep.
So I am like your grandson in that case.
Perfect.
But so I picked Mad Mardigan as a human fighter, and so the rule I made for him to be true to his character in the movie is that if there's a beautiful woman in the room, he will flirt with her no matter how dangerous it is. Like it's silly, and in the one shot it didn't actually come up, but like. That is the rule of like, I will go to any lengths to flirt with a beautiful woman and I have to do it. And no one else at the table knew. In the most recent one, the one I told you about with like the barbarian turned cleric, I made a rule for myself that because I refuse to see any more of my brothers fall, if I see someone being badly injured, I will rush their side, even like if it prompts opportunity attacks or like puts me in danger. Like I would rather die than see one of them fall. And so like you just create a rule that like adds this honesty to who your character is. But if everyone has one rule and they don't tell anyone else what it is, you just kind of start seeing these choices that like may not make sense to the other players. And it kind of like adds this mystery of like trying to figure out what is your character's rule. But it also just makes for interesting things where you're not making the logical choice, but you're making the choice your character would definitely make. So yeah, I think it'd be fun. Like everyone has to pick a hamartia. They could be silly, like the Mad Mardigan one, or they can be like really deep and tied to your character, like my cleric one.
What's your thought about sharing that with the DM so they can give you chances to do it?
Oh, I mean, I'm in favor of the DM knowing anything that gives them the ability to create opportunities that enrich the story. So if the players want to keep it a secret from the DM, then fine, I guess. But in my opinion, you know, as long as you have a DM who's tactful enough to not just do it very like over the head, like there's a beautiful woman, but she's surrounded by 10 devils. Like, what are you going to do? I think the DM could have a lot of fun creating opportunities to make that a more enriching experience for them.
I think that sounds like a lot of fun. I'll try that out in my next game.
A couple quicker ones. If you really want to make things set in quickly with the characters, they're just like, ooh, this story's different. Give the party a moral debt that they can never repay. Have a villager hide them, even though the villager knows their house is going to be burned because they like helped you, and you can't do anything to help them, and you just have to like carry that weight of knowing that people have suffered for you. It prompts you to feel like we cannot mess up now. Like people have already paid a price on our behalf. We owe it to them to see this through. So yeah, just finding ways to create like a moral debt that cannot be rectified. I think it gives even more purpose to the party. Kind of along those lines in terms of just like setbacks, like this isn't a very revolutionary one, but I think it's one that gets overlooked. Give the antagonist a victory in like the early or middle parts that the party cannot undo. Like let the villain succeed at something, like undeniably so. It raises the stakes. It creates more animosity between you and the villain, and it just makes the world feel scarier of just like, oh, like we're not just going to be able to walk up at the end of the campaign and kill him and like everyone was saved. Like he has done a lot of damage already. Here's another one that could be interesting. If you give different players like private win conditions that conflict with each other, you tell one player that like you obviously build it into the story. So like they're not just doing it because you told them to, it's because their background kind of demands it. For one of them, like their goal is to see the crown restored. But then another one, they are there to make sure the monarchy ends. And that's not stated in the beginning until you get to the point where the choices are like, are we actually helping ascend this person to the throne, or are we like toppling the monarchy? And all of a sudden there's conflict between the party of just like, wait, what? Like, no, we're not, I can't allow this to happen. And like, they have to sort it out.
I did this in my last game, but I had a player approach me and say, I want to join this faction and like put me in contact with these shady characters, and I'm going to start like feeding them information. And his ultimate goal was to replace the monarch with somebody else. But we did it in such a way that like the person, like the whole party chose, yeah, this person, we want this person on the throne, and he kind of like engineered it all, like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be great. So there's kind of like a joke between us that he had like put this corrupt person in power, but no one else really knew. And that was the end of the story. And we didn't have to cover it, but like he knows that he won,
Yeah.
It makes me think of Critical Role Campaign 1 ending as well. Joe Manganiello was a guest character for the last, I don't know, like few episodes.
Yeah. So he was Archon, and at the very end, they fight Vecna. They defeat Vecna. Defeat Vecna, and basically he's like, "Sweet, cool story, bros." Cuts his own arm off, grabs the hand of Vecna, slaps it on, is like, "Outies," and then just disappears. And everyone's just like,
man.
"What?" And then Joe Manganiello like packs his stuff up and then gets up from the table and just walks away.
Walks out.
I was like, "Oh, that's bad. That's all kinds of bad."
Yeah, he had a different win condition for sure. I don't know if Matt Mercer even knew, the DM. I don't know if he knew, but that's a classic example. It was just like a loose thread,
Yeah, that's crazy. I'll just share one or two more because I want to leave room to talk about other like thoughts you guys have. But I don't know why. For me, I think it's very fascinating if you as the DM have created a world where there's the possibility or the threat of a throwaway choice having earth-shattering impact. And I actually like the first thought for this comes from the D&D movie from a few years ago when they're at the bridge and the sorcerer takes one wrong step and the bridge collapses. Like I love the idea of just like tiny little choices that shouldn't make any difference, and in a more straightforward campaign they wouldn't, but it's like, oh no, like that set off, maybe it's that you're in a merchant's shop and you go to reach for something and you knock it over and the merchant like gets you arrested or whatever. Or like maybe you have an NPC companion who is a very funny person and they're very helpful and they're always cracking jokes. So you crack a joke back to them and they get offended by it and they leave. These are kind of random examples, but just I like the idea of players never knowing if what feels like a safe choice might actually not be a safe choice in the end. Creates a little more chaos in the world. And obviously you either have to be a great improviser as a DM or you just have to plan a lot of random possibilities to have these in the chamber. So it's obviously not a necessary thing, but I think it can make the world feel a lot more lived in when there's like the chance of something crazy happening from a little tiny choice.
Yeah, that bridge scene is classic. That whole movie was really good, but like, oh man.
Where Doctor Strange is like, there's only one version where this works out. And you're like, is it just because that rat goes through that van in the right way? Because something so innocuous just becomes the reason that like it all works out. That one rat did the one thing. I do really like a very angry shopkeeper who's just like, you break it, you bought time in the magical prison I have.
Yeah.
Boom, you're gone. And now you guys got to figure out how to get out. And you're like, what?
Or he's a former adventurer and it's like some evil spirit that he's got stored in this jar and he just like put it in a bad spot. It gets knocked over and it's like, you just released, my nemesis, and he's going to go find the nearest dead body and like occupy it, like, and come try to kill me.
Can you imagine the fear you could instill in your party if you've already established a world where they know stuff like this can happen, and they say, "I go reach for this object," and you say, "Give me a dexterity roll," and they're just like, "Wait, what? No." Actually, Neal, what you said, this is perfect because it transitions off from me to you. I want your guys' opinion on something that I've spent some time thinking about, and it also loops back to Tolkien, so it's just kind of this culmination of everything at once. You watch or read Return of the King. Tolkien created what he called the eucatastrophe, which is the good catastrophe. It's when, like, basically, you could say it's similar to a Deus Ex Machina. To Tolkien, the eucatastrophe specifically cannot be earned. It's something that, like, was, out of the hands of the people. play. And that plays out in Return of the King in the sense that Frodo actually didn't throw the ring in. It's because Gollum bit his finger off and fell backwards. No one would have planned for that. And that was what set off the whole chain of events that allowed them to win. And so I was thinking about the fact that as a reader or a viewer, that is, the Eucatastrophe is this monumentally beautiful and cathartic moment that we don't care how it happened. We're just so glad that it did. But then I thought about it. If you tried to recreate a Eucatastrophe in a campaign, everyone feels cheated. It feels like, why did I just do this if some all-powerful god just came and saved me regardless of my own efforts? And so I've spent some time trying to think about how could you create a scenario where there is a level of Eucatastrophe. I guess it would be more Deus Ex Machina and not Eucatastrophe, since Eucatastrophe demands that it wasn't earned or deserved. Because it does have to feel earned for the players in the party, or else it just feels cheap. Have you guys ever attempted a campaign where they literally were overwhelmed, but there was a Deus Ex Machina because of choices they made earlier in the campaign that may have felt inconsequential at the time? I'm just curious how you pull that off. Because if done right, it could be this like beautiful moment, but it feels like it'd be so easy for people. It's like, why did I put all these hours into this if I didn't actually get the power to do it at the end?
Yeah, it's a classic don't do this DMing tip. Like, do not Deus Ex Machina your party. Reddit RPG horror stories is full of stories of people complaining about this exact thing. I think there's definitely a way to do it. The one time that it's happened in my game, I've mentioned it a few times, and I mentioned it earlier this episode, when I had the meteor crash into the town, into this city, and like level it and fill it with abhorrent monsters. My players had like basically tried everything they could think of, and then finally my brother, who was playing a cleric, used an ability called Divine Intervention, which is you roll a D100, and if it's equal to or under your level, then it works.
Oh wow.
And I think he was like level 12 or 13 or something, but he rolled it, and he rolled under his level, and I was like, great. And so I had his deity send down this avatar that like cleansed this meteor with this, terrible, chaotic, evil energy, and like rewound time, expelled this thing from existence, rewound time, so the city rebuilt itself in front of their eyes, and like all of these people were resurrected, and they saved the city. But it was because they had like literally tried for months of real world time and like weeks of game time to like beat their head against the wall and try to figure out how to solve this problem. And I was like, you know what, this is a great way, because they've done everything they can think of. Now they're calling on a higher power, and there's a really big chance that it's not going to work. Yeah. So that was like the one time I've done something like that, and it was really cool. And it was cool to like describe it and describe like the city like rebuilding itself, them watching time reverse and all of this stuff happen. But yeah, that's because they had put so much time and effort into fixing it, that this was like, okay, this is our last ditch effort. It works. It technically wasn't our power doing it, but his devotion meant that his deity would help them in that way.
Well, and it still came down, because what I like about it, first of all, what you said of like they had spent a lot of in-game time trying other solutions.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's, even though the effect, if you were watching it as a movie, it's a Deus Ex Machina, but it came down to a roll of an ability. Like it still came down to like him actively making a choice that enabled that to happen. So that may be a way around it, is like you just have to have some form of magic wielder who can attempt something that's so low possibility, but could trigger the Eucatastrophe moment.
There's a 9th level spell, which is the highest level spell, called Wish, which also it gives you a bunch of examples of stuff it could do, and then it says also, up to your discretion, they can describe what they want to wish for, and you can say if it happens or not.
Interesting.
And that's kind of another way that you might do something like this. But yeah, it's only like it's a really expensive spell, and I think you can only like cast it once, and I don't know what the current rules are, but yeah, there's a bunch of stipulations around it. But that's like your last ditch. Can we solve this thing?
For the Eucatastrophe, I think one of the interesting things is like conceptually we're too close to the story. So when you look at Lord of the Rings, I think one of the benefits is that you as the reader or person experiencing the movie, you're far enough away, because in my head I'm playing this out. Like Tolkien the Dungeon Master, and like player playing Frodo fails. And he's like, Gollum bites your hand off and falls into the volcano. And everyone at the table is like, what just happened? And it,
I didn't walk from Rivendell.
Like, and the volcano blows up and you're like, shh, no, hold on. Wait a second.
Yeah.
What are you saying right now? Also, the eagles show up. You're like, I wanted to fly the eagles the whole time. I hate you. You're the worst dungeon master of it. No, but I think the eagles finally showed up. This sucks. I hate this story, but I think we're too close to the story because like you're also the insert of the person writing it as the dungeon master. Once you start involving the dice, they become a neutral party. So I think you still have the opportunity to potentially do the eucatastrophe because dice are still involved and they become this nebulous thing that, because if they roll a roll, and this is the thing that I've always said, if I'm not comfortable with a 1 or a 20, I shouldn't ask for a roll because inevitably it's also taught me like this is, going kind of back to something you've alluded to. There are certain aspects of D&D that have fundamentally changed the way I look at the world. And one of them is if a person stands on 10 toes and says they are 100% sure about something, I don't trust it because I've played too much D&D to know 5%, while small, is still very real. And so like if I'm not comfortable asking if I'm not comfortable with someone rolling a 1 or comfortable with them rolling a 20, I shouldn't ask. I should be like, okay, so these are the things that are happening at the table, and then roll for something else. But the idea of the only way that I think you could land it is if the dice are the ones doing it, because it can't be me. Because if I do it, then it's exactly like you said. It's too cheap. It was me doing it. No matter what I've stacked up, no matter how much I've pre-thought of, hey, you did the right things for the eagles. They're totally going to show up. The elves are going to do these certain things. The dwarves remember, their debt that they have to you, and all of these things culminate in or unbeknownst to you, all of these things have been happening in the background and they know they can't let this happen or their world also is destroyed. Because that can also be the eucatastrophe that shows up.
Gollum hits the bite attack and then he swallows and then he starts to disengage. And then on initiative 20, the lair effect happens, and so there's like a tremor, and Gollum has to make a dexterity save or fall prone.
Yeah,
and then you roll a d8 to figure out the random direction in which he falls prone, and then he falls prone and he falls off, and that would be the dice determining that
masterclass.
And it's like that scenario that was just presented is like, I can't think of exact instances of that, but I can think of things that are like close, where it is just up to the dice, and the dice are the insert for the world just existing, because I don't have if I'm rolling behind the screen, then I have the agency to say what it is. But if it's all out in the open, like there's no agency other than there it is. That's what the world decided. One of the things that's more 40K, Play on Tabletop is a YouTube channel that I follow a lot. And one of the things that they always say prior to them starting anything, dice tell stories. Because no matter what, because it's much more than D&D, it is an extremely tactical game. That is the whole point of the game. I need my army to kill your army. That's the only goal. Is either I've wiped the entire table and you don't have any more units, or I've gotten more points than you. It's very tactical. No matter how tactical I am, if those D6s don't go the way I want and they go the way you want, I lose. And so the idea that dice tell stories, I think, would be the only way you could possibly land the eucatastrophe.
Interesting. As you guys have talked about it, I think another way you could prepare the players' minds for something like that is if leading up to whatever the encounter where the eucatastrophe might happen or not, based on our dice roll, you present them with a choice of 2 outcomes. The most ideal outcome is the highest risk. It's the one where it's probably not going to work, but there's like more glory, there's more lives saved, whatever, if you do it. Or there's another choice that's still going to be tough, but it's more likely to achieve. Kind of we're using Lord of the Rings as an example. like at the same point where Aragorn chooses to take his forces and leave Gondor to march on the Black Gates. Like, he chose to take the risky path because he thought that was the right way. So if you set up a choice like that and they choose the riskier one, they're already bought into like, okay, we're probably not going to win this, but we're going to see what we can do. And that like really sets up nicely to arrive at a point where it's like, all right, roll for this catastrophe to happen or not. Because you've already prepped them of like, you've chosen the path of low chance of possibility. It's going to take a miracle for you to get this out.
I just looked up some examples of catastrophe, and other than The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, they mentioned the Death Star, but I feel like that's Luke leaning on the Force and learning how to trust it for the first time in order to hit that shot, more than it just being like not up to him.
Yeah, I don't. Based on the definition of eucatastrophe that I've read from Tolkien, I don't think that qualifies.
The other one is the kiss that saves Snow White. Like the prince just shows up and kisses her, and it saves her. Or like Sleeping Beauty, it's like it doesn't really have to do with it, but like it saves her.
That's funny to think of Disney princesses as being the subjects of eucatastrophe, but those, in my understanding, actually fit better.
Yeah, because like I was saying, for the Death Star situation, like once you layer in Rogue One, there's like way too much effort for that.
That's true. Oh man, I feel like we could delve into this for hours, and you have. And we will surely have you back sometime to chat more about story structure, about protagonism, as you continue to uncover these rules that you're finding, these eternal heroic truths. I'm excited for future episodes for sure. But yeah, thanks for coming, Jameson. We really appreciate it. Tell the people about where they can find you online.
Yeah, so the podcast is called Becoming the Main Character. It's on all major platforms that you would listen to podcasts on. I am on socials at Becoming Main, but I put all my time into my episodes, so I really post much. So I'd plug the podcast itself on podcasting platforms, or there's that Substack, School of Protagonism, where I write more of the stuff that's less tied to specific stories, and it's more about transferring the rules of storytelling into our real life. So those are the two places I'd plug.
We also usually do like listener homework. Usually it's like read these things or watch these things to kind of give you some ideas. Maybe like one or two things if they're looking for like ideas about hero's journey, ways to weave that stuff into their campaigns.
Dang, okay. My first gut reactions were just media that I've been obsessed with lately.
Sure.
But, if for people who are, I almost feel like it's silly to mention because it's like the most basic, but if you're not familiar with the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, look it up. It's like the most foundational approach to understanding like the arc that most traditional characters involve, which involves making hard choices and sacrifice and stuff like that. So it's a great foundation. I plugged Robert McKee. He's written a bunch of books about different aspects of story, and he's really good at what he does. I guess what I'd say, it's not a specific author, but just read more short stories. And what's interesting to realize is most great authors that you can think of, they've also written a bunch of short stories that just weren't as big of a deal. But you can go to like, especially if it's an older one, you can just go to Gutenberg.org and get like all the short stories of Mark Twain or like all the short stories of Leo Tolstoy. And I bet if you read a short story a day, you will find things you're like, ooh, that's a really interesting character decision that I want to like work into an NPC or I want to build in my next character. Short stories are just, the way I describe it is like movies, novels, full-length stories, 3-act stories. At the end of them, they make you go, like you feel the catharsis, you feel the resolution. Short stories make you go, like they don't end in such satisfying ways, but it leaves you thinking, it leaves you questioning, it challenges you. And so I'm a big fan of just reading short stories because it gives you a lot of ideas that you would take so much time to go through that many books. But you can explore tons of different universes, tons of different settings with a short story a day.
Short stories blow me away with how vivid of a world they can create and how interesting of a character they can create. And then like go through that arc in such a short time. I am so impressed by anybody who can pull that off. I feel like it'd be harder to do that than like a novel.
It's such a mastery of craft that it requires the most hardcore economics of word choice.
Yes.
But yeah, I've been loving it, getting into more, and I've been reading a lot of like horror short stories because I used to hate horror, and I've become obsessed with it. And like it literally started when I covered Dracula and Frankenstein, which they're not actually like super scary books, but they're gothic horror.
Yeah,
and it just lit
progenitors. Yeah,
it lit something inside of me, and now I can't stop. Which again is why I had to buy Ravenloft the second it came out. But yeah, I just go read short stories. They're incredible.
So I'll go one step further because it's been a long time since we've done a specific thing, and I think I'll just go all the way in on it. Derek has no idea what's coming next. Jameson, obviously you don't. So I think it's been too long since we've done a top 10 where we throw out 10 campaign ideas. Are you down? Are you down, Jameson?
I mean, I don't know what that looks like, but yes.
Yeah, we can send you some episodes. We can give you an outline. We'll show you what it's like. But I think I think you would revel in the exercise.
Right up your alley.
And so, yeah, we'll do that. Done.
We just want to thank Jameson again for coming on and chatting with us about what makes stories compelling, what makes interesting challenges and interesting stories for your main characters. And we're really excited to see what new stories he comes out with on Becoming the Main Character podcast, and also excited to see what contributions he's got for the Dungeon Masters block moving forward.
And of course, if you enjoyed that and you want to tell us about the main character energy that you have, you can always head over to Dungeon Masters block, or nope. Yeah, I don't know where you could head to do all that. You can always email us at dungeonmastersblock@gmail.com. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode or any of the others, you can head over to iTunes or your podcatcher of choice and leave us a rating and a review.
Reminder, again, if you want to join us for the office hours coming up in July, that's July 10th. More details, we'll post about those in the Discord. And again, the Discord can be found at bit.ly/dmbanter. The Dungeon Masters Block is a proud member of the Block Party Podcast Network. You can find more great shows on the Block Party Podcast Network, like Dungeons and Dragons and Daughters, Knocked Prone, The Bad Venture Club, How Not to Dungeon Master, The Titans of Altera, and more.
But as always, we want to thank you for listening to the Dungeon Masters Block, the place where we come to talk about the Dungeon Master, the most important person in the game, the only person capable of playing God,
killing the main characters,
and lowering the ego scores of everyone else at the table. I'm DM Neal. Good night and good luck.
And I'm DM Derrick. Until next quest, stay inspired and keep on dungeon mastering.
It's not inspiration, it's not wisdom, and it's bad advice.
Cars are like modern day boats. If you want them to keep playing the game, burn those.
Goodbye.